Hi, everybody who's joining me today. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you to those of you who have called into the show and said that you're enjoying hearing about the secret of love. So thank you so much. I'm glad to know that it's touching some hearts and minds and that it's having an impact. And that's the purpose of our monthly show. This show being taped in January, but it will be shown in the month of February, which, guess what, is the month of Valentine's Day. So I'm going to talk about that. For one thing, you know, it's so interesting to me that holidays are either joyous for people, humdrum, or downright negative for people. And there's only one thing that sets the joy apart from the negativity and upset, and that is our thinking. That's what we've been talking about for these 4 episodes, and that's what the book, The Secret of Love, talks about, explains. And so let's delve further into that fact, because when you understand really what I call the operating principles of the mind, how the mind operates in order to give us an experience of joy or negativity every single moment throughout our lives. So this is not about positive thinking. You know, that was a fad for a while, and I think we all delved into it, and it's even been satirized on Saturday Night Live because it doesn't work. We get thinking from out of the blue, and sometimes it's critical, and sometimes it's judgmental, and sometimes we're full of expectations and desires that come unmet, and then we get upset. All of that is not reality out there. It's our personal reality that's being shown on the canvas of life, you might say, through the lens of consciousness, through the light of consciousness. You know, I'm looking into a camera, and I could use that as a metaphor. It's a camera on a tripod. I wish I could see you, but I'm seeing this camera. And the light, when it gets turned on, that's the conscious light. It's a great metaphor for our consciousness being conscious of everything we think. If the light was not on the camera, you would not be getting an image of me talking. If the sound was not turned on, you would not hear me. So you need things working together in unison. And that's what the 3 principles explain, that through mind, thought, and consciousness, these are all capacities, they're abilities. They're not something we do. They're something that happens to all humans, just like our heart pumps and our lungs, our heart beats and our lungs pump. We're not trying to make that happen. So we don't make our thinking happen, and we can't make ourselves think of something positive when we're really feeling down and out. However, knowing that that's the ticket, that that's the way we operate, shifts things. It changes things within us. We don't believe everything we think anymore because we realize it's a passing thought that's brought to reality through consciousness. That's the game. That's what's happening. So we stop taking ourselves so seriously. And guess what happens? We lighten up more. We have more fun in life. So back to Valentine's Day, sometimes called V-Day. You know, I'm a local marriage and family therapist in West Hartford, and I hear so many stories through the years about people who are disappointed on Valentine's Day that they weren't honored the way they wanted to be, or their boyfriend or their husband brought them flowers, and they should know that they don't like flowers because they're going to die, or, or why can't he remember what it is I really like, or the color, or the kind of flower I want? So there's all this thinking of judgment, judgmental thinking of expectations that go unmet. And guess what happens to the loving feelings you once had for your partner or boyfriend or girlfriend or parent even, or child? In the moment you're having thoughts of judgment, expectation, of criticism, that feeling of love gets covered up. It's as though the sun is always there. It shines the same amount of light onto the earth, but it gets covered up with clouds, with a cloud cover. Well, our ability to love is consistent. It is always there. We're not always aware of it because there's thinking, negative thinking, that will cover it up. So I've bookmarked a couple of quotes for you. In The Secret of Love, on page 64, there's a quote by the Dalai Lama. "Love is the absence of judgment." I had never heard that quote before, but in writing this book, somehow that came to our attention. I don't remember the circumstance, but love is the absence of judgment. Think about it. When you have that loving feeling, and it could be in front of a stranger that you've just struck up a conversation with, and you're feeling like you're on the same wavelength, you're on the same page in life, you're in agreement, you have this reflection of somebody who's reflecting back your own ideas, and you feel love. It's weird. How can you feel love for a stranger? Well, you're feeling love for yourself and what you're made of. Mind, thought, and consciousness. We're not talking about the physical self. We're not talking about this physical realm, so to speak. We're talking about what comes before all of that. What comes before all of that is some people refer to it as the spiritual nature of life. People talk about it as the soul, your soul, the soul of life. The Hebrew word for the breath of life is ruach, which also means love. Now, isn't that interesting? You'll find it in so many cultures throughout the world because it's a principle. It's true no matter where you are, no matter who you are. So, judgment, when you're in a mood of judgment and you've got a bunch of thinking going through your mind about how your partner is not stepping up to the plate, is not behaving the way he or she used to, is falling short. And so we go into judgment about the other person. Well, guess what? That's looking through the wrong end of the telescope. You want to turn the telescope around and see that it's coming from you. And then you'll realize, gee, wonder what's going on for that other person. Why are they not showing me the same gratitude and affection and all of the beautiful things that they once showed me? So from that state of mind, your behavior is bound to be different. Can you hear the difference in looking within? You become more curious. Why are you having that experience? As opposed to having that experience tell you something that you made up. We don't know what's going on for the other person. So I'm going to read you another quote that has to do with just that. This is a quote by Sydney Banks on page 89. If you have the book, you might want to read it along with me. I remember someone telling me he could never forgive his dad because his dad was alcoholic. And when he got drunk, he would beat him. He said he could never possibly forgive his dad. To me, that was sad. Suddenly, he realized what his dad must be going through. Not just him, but his dad. To be going through this awful state. It was like a light switched on in his head, and he suddenly burst out crying. It was the first time in his life that he felt love for his dad. And now he and his dad are the best of friends. To me, that's a real success story, because this person didn't just find the innocence toward his dad. Since he was the finder, he projected this innocence to everybody else in life. Just because he saw the innocence in his dad. He had that personal experience, what we call an insight. And then he realized the innocence in everybody. Everybody is just acting, behaving, speaking from how it's looking to them in their own mind. And it's looking real to them because their consciousness is shining the light of awareness on whatever is in their mind, onto the screen of life, the reality of life. Wow. You know, to recognize innocence in other people is such a game changer, I can't begin to tell you. And that releases a feeling of love and compassion and understanding. I had someone recently ask me what to do about their 10-year-old daughter, very smart girl, but she's just not into school. You know, she's not applying herself, she's not doing her work, doing her homework. And what occurred to me was that the best thing for a parent is to get into that curious state of mind where they see innocence in their child, where they see that that behavior is coming from some thinking the child is doing. And then from that state of mind of curiosity, you see you're no longer upset, you're no longer frustrated, aggravated, you're just in a space of love and understanding. And from that space, the child will pick up that you're not faking it, you're not in this angry state of mind and saying, well, what is it with you? Why are you not into school? You could say the same words. I'm really curious why you're not into school. That is so surprising to me. Help me understand. Now that state of mind, I mean, it's not a technique, so you don't know the state of mind that the child is going to be at the time you're asking from your good state of mind. They may be really not good at all, in which case you might not get a good answer. But you've got a much better chance of getting an answer that's truthful from the heart than you are coming at this child from anger and upset and frustration. So you can start to see how your own behavior shifts and changes and how that is more likely to bring out the best in the other person. We have a bigger role than we realize in bringing out the best in the other person. If you're in the blame game, if you're blaming the other person for their bad behavior without taking time to understand how that came about, what was the thinking? And again, it was innocent, even if it was negative thinking about you. And let me tell you, I hear these stories all the time in my in my office that how could their partner do something like that to them? That's, the operative word. It appears as though, and I know I've talked about the illusion of life. The principles, mind, thought, and consciousness show us that life is coming from our own illusion about what's going on. It's coming from our take on it. We're not in the other person's head. We don't know about the years of resentment that they've built up that they didn't even realize was resentment. They just are stuck with that awful feeling of, boy, you're not treating me very well, so tit for tat, I'm not going to treat you very well. Doesn't make sense when you look at it that way, but that's kind of automatic with the human brain. It's what the brain does. It connects dots that don't even exist. It thinks that it's looking at reality. So when you're in the middle of seeing a bad behavior in another person, that looks real to you. And, there's a good chance a lot of other people are going to say, wow, yeah, that looks real. That is real. That person really is angry and sarcastic and belittling and all those little terrible things, that humans do. Client of mine named that. She called it "My Human is Showing," because we all get caught up in ridiculous thinking. And years ago we would say, "Oh, my slip is showing," but now we can say, "My human is showing." Whoops! And then you bounce back. That's amazing to me. That also, we may be silly humans at times, but we're also equipped with the ability to bounce back. We have a natural resiliency. That's our innate health. We're born with that ability. Everybody is. And some people bounce back a lot quicker, a lot easier than others. Guess what the difference is? Of course, it's thinking. It's the personal thinking the person is doing, and they're dwelling on it, and they're making it bigger and bigger. They're making mountains out of molehills in their own mind, in the way they're thinking about things. It could be so innocent. This alcoholic father was doing the best he could given how life was looking to him. We don't know. We are not in his head. People who suffer from alcoholism have different thinking. They think that they can't survive without drinking. They think it's part of their genetic makeup, and so they're stuck with it. They just can't help it. They've seen generations of people using alcohol as a coping mechanism. And on. There's so many different thoughts that people have, but there's only one principle behind it. The principle of thought is the capacity to think, the ability to think anything. And when you realize that, it's like you open yourself up to possibility. And you start to look within yourself where your thinking is getting in your way, where your thinking is covering up this beautiful feeling of love that's natural and pure when it's not contaminated with negative thoughts. So with that, I've got one other. The feeling of love. It's on page 161. Just have to take a little sip here. So, the feeling of love. Your own inner beauty will increase and grow as you recognize the beauty in others. This quality may not always seem evident, but I believe you are wise enough to know that everyone has a spark of the divine spirit which they need only allow to come forth. Yeah, everybody. You know, it's interesting, what just crossed my mind is that there's a annual conference that's held in the UK, usually in June, and I'll be to this one. This will be my first one. It's the largest one. We have other conferences on the three principles, and it was started by a rabbi in the UK. It's touching, you know, because I asked somebody, well, how did that come about? And he said he asked one of the rabbis, and the rabbi said that he never understood fully what it meant to walk with God until he heard about the three principles. I mean, the three principles were never put out. In fact, it was discovered by a psychologist. It was uncovered by Sidney Banks, who, the story goes, he wrote more books than he's ever read in his life. He was an ordinary man, but a psychologist, three psychologists heard Sidney Banks speak, and they realized the ramifications for their field of psychology. So somehow, you know, it goes beyond and includes all religions and all societies. They're sharing this all over the globe now. Africa, Norway, Sweden, Israel, I can't think of Denmark. There are projects all over the world to bring this understanding to humanity. What a different world we'll have, you know, if you start seeing it in your own life. And that old adage about, you know, it starts at home. You begin to see for yourself how your own thinking creeps in and gets in the way of a beautiful feeling and then bends back to that beautiful feeling. Our thinking is easy to let go of. A colleague of mine, Dr. Dicken Bettinger, talks about falling out of your own thinking, falling out of your thinking. It's so easy. We do it all the time. I always forget the number. It's like 7,000, I don't know, more than that. Maybe it's 70,000. I'm not good with numbers. Thoughts go through our mind every day. We're not hanging on to every one of them. But what we make of the thoughts that run through our mind, it's like a ticker tape all day long, thinking different thoughts. What we make of those thoughts will catch them, we'll grab onto some of them, and we'll make something out of it. Well, because he didn't kiss me goodbye this morning when he left for work, he must be mad at me. And all day you're trying to figure out what's he mad about. Meanwhile, he was thinking about being late for work, and that was the only thing that was on his mind. Innocence. You don't know. We think we know. It feels like we know. We know the truth. We know reality. You know, that's what fighting is about. Each person thinks that their thought is the right thought. It sure looks that way to the thinker. And that's due to consciousness. That's how we're constructed, to have a sense of reality. But when you know how it works, you can navigate through life so much easier and with such a better feeling about life, not just about yourself and your partner and your parent and your relative and your child, but about all of life, because the clouds part easier. You're not hanging on to those cloudy, negative thoughts. Well, let's see. I know we're coming to a close soon, so I want to see if there's something else that I wanted to share with you, other than the fact that next month, I'm going to have a guest with me. I love to have guests on the show. And this is Christine Higgins. And she is an engineer in Massachusetts. I forget the story of how she ran across the principles, but she started a group on, it's a Facebook group called 3PNE, Three Principles New England. And she's come to Hartford a couple of times before. We're going to do a seminar, and we're going to do a third seminar this coming spring. That's the plan anyway. We haven't actually set a date yet, but maybe we'll let you know next month when she comes on to give her background and history. It's so valuable to hear from other people what touched them about their understanding of the principles and how that affected their lives. Honestly, you know, it's kind of like discovering the earth isn't flat. What that must have been like when that happened. The earth isn't flat. Well, there were people who still hung on to their old view. No, the earth is flat, and everything I think is valid and absolute truth because it's beamed in from some satellite dish somewhere. I used to think that as a kid, you know. My thinking must be beamed in from somewhere because I'm not making it happen. But what I make of my thoughts, I am making happen. So next month, we're going to hear from Christine Higgins. And just to do a recap for our Valentine's Day month, you know, people talk about going on vacation and they want to have that vacation state of mind throughout the year, throughout their lifetime. Well, nobody can pull that one off. Nobody can. Sid Banks couldn't pull that off. No matter, you know, how much insight he had into how the principles work. The reason you can't have it all the time is because you're going to have negative thoughts. That's human nature. It's going to happen. However, if you let yourself bounce back, if you exercise that resiliency, you will fall back into a beautiful state of mind. If you let go of your expectations and your judgments, and you realize that they're just coming from what you've made of things, you're going to live a much simpler, easier, happier, more contented, peaceful life. So that's why we bring this to you, and please write in, call in with any comments, any particular question you have. I'm happy to answer it on one of the segments. Okay? Have a wonderful month. Bye for now.